King Solomon's temple. After it was built, he gathered all of his artisans together, the stonemasons, the glass artists, the coppersmiths, the silversmiths, and he said, whoever is the greatest artisan of the construction of this kingdom gets to sit in this throne to my right. Mason's talking about, well, without my skill, there would be no walls to the castle, and glass artisans are saying, without our skill, all the weather would come in, but no light, and on and on and on. And so the blacksmith says, without me, none of you would have made anything. They were the skilled metalsmiths who know how to deal with steel and iron to create the machines that then eventually put themselves out of business. I certainly wouldn't call myself a blacksmith. Blacksmithing's gone. It's part of the culture that doesn't need to exist anymore. Blacksmithing was a cultural necessity at some point. The blacksmith made the tools. The blacksmith built the machines. The blacksmith drove the Industrial Revolution. It was a skill that was taught in school. It still had a lot of relevance in industry. This is how things were made. They were forged while hot. After World War II, there was another wave of industrialization that swept through the country where things all of a sudden became much more mechanized and machine-made. And this was also something of value because it reflected something about the future. If you remember the World's Fair, everybody's life was about the future. So the blacksmith actually just died out. He became irrelevant and redundant. I love to forge steel. I dream about it. Everybody has that thing that they do where they maybe had a really stressful day or there's a lot in your mind, so there's this happy place you go to try and relax and fall asleep. I always think about forging different shapes.
Do you like it hot?
I went to school originally for medical illustration, and I never made anything. I never picked up a tool until I was in college, my life. And so I took my first 3D class. Sculpture was something that I was much better at and enjoyed a lot more. And I got involved in kind of fabricating, cutting shapes out of steel and blending them together. And I started heating things up with a torch, so I could manipulate it. I got this idea that if I could figure out a way to keep them hot, and I could really control the material. And then I saw an article in Popular Mechanics magazine about how to build a coal forge out of a trash can. So I did that, and it was mostly for the sculpture, and I had no idea that I was blacksmithing, and I didn't even think that there were any blacksmiths, or that was even a reasonable thing to think about doing. At that point, just really kind of ignorant about the whole thing. The word smith comes from the word smite, which is to strike. There's a silversmith, there's a whitesmith, which works with pewter, there's a coppersmith, and the blacksmith is the person who always worked with iron within their community. When I built that forge and got the first piece of metal hot, it was like something I already knew how to do. Like something inside of me came alive and I was like, oh, I understand this completely. Like more than anything else I've ever done, I understood it. Like just intuitively, I felt some kind of connection with it. is to change its physical characteristics by redistributing the mass. So really when I'm forging something, I'm not like cutting away like carving, and I'm not adding like modeling in clay. I'm just taking the existing mass, that in that case was a cube, and through the use of some tools and heat, just rearranging all that mass into something else. We were contacted to design the podiums for Bush's inaugural by a friend of ours, this fellow by the name of Bill Lance, who's a designer that we'd worked for in the past. He was hired by the RNC to design all the events around the inaugural weekend. Is like this big thing. There's a lot of balls and parties and events. And usually how it works is they hire an event planner who has a designer that designs the theme. You know, all these things are much bigger than anyone thinks. We've done a lot of work for Bill, so he calls me up and he says, look, I want to throw you a bone. We've got this kickoff party, and I want you to design the podiums that Bush will speak at, and Powell, and Cheney, and I forget who else, you know. We knew it was out front of the Lincoln Memorial, so we're kind of, you know, deciding, like, well, what's appropriate, what's not, what's the rest of the event look like? So we get online and we start looking at podiums, you know, and just trying to come up with something that's really thoughtful. Yeah, and then we saw this, up comes this picture. It was of Benito Mussolini, and he was in front of this beautiful revival podium, you know, which fit with the Lincoln Memorial. It's kind of in the similar aesthetic, you know. So we basically took that fascist Italian podium and recreated it in steel for Bush's inaugural. That's it's our little joke. These are a new group of pieces that I'm working on that are about trying to shed some of the craft or artisanship from the work. Now it's kind of the silent partner that doesn't stand out in front, you know, and scream to be noticed. And those pieces are more just about working directly in the material and just responding to the material and using a variety of tools just to start pulling some of the shapes out without really trying to control the process very much, just kind of letting it happen. American blacksmithing never really had a very kind of popular era in the ornamental realm. America being, you know, this kind of puritanical, Adamic paradise, but workers' paradise is what America always was.